They say honesty is the foundation of marriage. I told my wife the truth before we ever said, I do. I couldn't have children. She said it didn't matter. For 6 years, I believed her. My name is Isaac Turner, and this is the story of how my perfect marriage became the perfect lie. It started with a bicycle accident when I was 12. One moment I was racing my brother down Maple Street. The next I was in a hospital bed learning that my dreams of fatherhood had died on the asphalt. The doctors explained it in clinical terms: severe testicular trauma, irreversible sterility, no possibility of biological children. Ever. I carried that knowledge through every relationship that never quite worked out. How do you tell someone you can never give them what most people consider fundamental? I learned to bring it up early, before hearts got too invested. Then I met Melissa Harris at a Vertex Analytics company mixer 7 years ago. She was coordinating the event, efficient, beautiful, with this laugh that made everyone around her smile. When she asked if I was enjoying myself, something sparked between us. We talked about work, books, the terrible corporate DJ, and by night's end, I knew I was in trouble. Our first date was coffee on Saturday morning that stretched into lunch, then dinner. She was smart, sharper than half the executives I worked with, and funny in ways that caught me off guard. By our third date, I knew I had to tell her. We were sitting in her car outside my apartment, and the words felt like lead in my throat. "Melissa, there's something you need to know," I began carefully. "If having kids is important to you, I understand, but I can't give you that. I'm sterile, have been since I was 12. She turned to look at me fully. For a moment, silence stretched between us, and I prepared for the gentle letdown I'd heard before. Instead, she took my hand. "I love you," she said simply. "Not some hypothetical future children. You're enough for me, Isaac. You're more than enough." Those words would echo mockingly years later, but that night, they felt like salvation. Our courtship was everything I dreamed of. Thoughtful dates where we discovered shared passions. Deep conversations lasting until dawn. When I proposed 18 months later on the same hiking trail where we'd had our first fight and makeup, she cried before saying yes. Our wedding was intimate. 50 people who actually mattered, held in her parents' backyard with string lights and her grandmother's roses. During our vows, Melissa looked directly into my eyes and promised to love me in all the ways that count. Our Costa Rica honeymoon was perfect. On our last night, Melissa brought up children one final time. "Are you sure you're okay with it just being us?" she asked, her head on my chest as we watched the sunset. I offered alternatives, adoption, fostering, but I was honest. "I think we're perfect as we are." "I think we're perfect too," she whispered. 6 years of marriage followed. We fell into comfortable rhythms, both working at Vertex Analytics in different departments, carpooling most mornings, building a life that felt stable and real. I earned $82,000 as a senior data analyst. Melissa coordinated projects with precision and ambition. Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Then, 18 months ago, everything began to change. Melissa transferred to operations under Director Richard Calloway. "It's a real promotion, Isaac," she said over dinner, practically glowing. "Richard seems great. He really believes in developing his team." I celebrated with her, proud of her advancement. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to how her eyes lit up when she talked about Richard Calloway. The changes started small. Later nights at the office. Weekend emails that made her frown and type urgent responses. A new intensity about her appearance, better clothes, more careful makeup, a gym membership she actually used. I attributed it all to new role pressure. When she came home exhausted and distracted, I made dinner and gave her space. When she guarded her phone more carefully, I assumed it was confidential work material. "Richard's demanding, but it's good experience," she'd explain when I asked how things were going. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? Our foundation was honesty. But over recent months, something had shifted. The distance became more pronounced. She worked later, sometimes not coming home until after 10. Our physical intimacy dwindled. She was always too tired, too stressed, too preoccupied. One Saturday morning in November, I decided to make her favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup. Maybe if I could ease whatever burden she was carrying, we could reconnect. I was pouring coffee when she walked into the kitchen, pale and trembling. "Isaac, we need to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 5 words, that's all it took to detonate 6 years of marriage. The coffee pot hissed as Melissa sat at our kitchen table, hands shaking so violently she had to clasp them together. I set down the mug I'd been filling and looked at her, really looked, and saw fear in her eyes I'd never seen before. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, 8 weeks. The words hung like smoke from an explosion. My analytical mind immediately went to the mathematical impossibility. I'd been sterile for 22 years. We'd both known this fundamental truth about our marriage from the very beginning. "That's not possible," I said, my voice eerily calm despite my racing heart. Melissa couldn't meet my eyes. Her face crumpled as she whispered, "I know." 2 words, that's all she needed to confirm what my mind was already calculating. If she was pregnant and I couldn't father children, then someone else had. Someone else had been inside my wife, had done what I never could. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the coffee pot's automatic shut-off click and distant Saturday morning traffic. I noticed for the first time that she'd taken off her wedding ring. It sat on the table between us like evidence. "Then how?" I asked, though we both knew the answer. Melissa's composure finally cracked completely. Tears started flowing and her words came out in rushed, guilty fragments. "There's someone at work. It just happened, Isaac. I didn't plan it. I never meant for this to happen." "You slept with someone else and got pregnant," I stated flatly. The crude language was unlike me, but something primal and wounded had been unleashed. Melissa flinched as if I'd struck her. "It's not like that," she protested weakly. "Then what is it like?" I demanded, standing up. I needed distance between myself and this conversation rewriting my entire reality. "Explain to me what it's like when my wife of 6 years gets pregnant by another man." She tried to minimize the damage. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I was stressed and he was there and it just happened. "How long?" I pressed. "What?" she asked, confused. "How long has this moment of weakness been happening? Because 8 weeks pregnant means you've been with him for at least that long, probably longer." Melissa's face went even paler. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months, half a year of deception. Half a year of coming home to me every night after being with another man. Half a year of lies while I worried about her stress, made her dinner, held her when she claimed to be tired. "Who is it?" I demanded. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything about how much worse this was about to get. "Richard," she finally admitted. "Richard Calloway." Her boss, the man she'd praised for being so supportive. The man whose demanding schedule had explained away every late night, every weekend email, every moment of distance. "Your boss," I said flatly, processing the implications. "You've been sleeping with your married boss for 6 months." "Isaac, please," she started. "Does he know?" I interrupted. "About the pregnancy?" "Yes," she answered reluctantly. "And?" I pressed. Melissa's silence told me everything. Richard Calloway had no intention of leaving his wife. This wasn't a love story. It was a simple affair that had produced an unwanted complication. But then Melissa said something that transformed my shock into cold, focused rage. "I want to keep the baby," she said, meeting my eyes for the first time since dropping the bomb. "And I was hoping we could raise it together, you and me, like it's ours." The audacity was breathtaking. She destroyed our marriage, betrayed everything we'd built, gotten pregnant by another man, and now she wanted me to help her raise the evidence of her infidelity. "You want me to raise your affair baby?" I said incredulously. "You always wanted to be a father," she began. "I wanted to be a father with my wife," I cut her off. "Not a cuckold raising some other man's child while pretending everything is fine." Melissa tried a different angle, her voice taking on the manipulative tone she used in project meetings. "Think about it, Isaac. This could be our chance to have the family we talked about." "This is your choice, Melissa," I interrupted harshly. "Your affair, your baby. You don't get to make unilateral decisions that destroy our marriage and then ask me to clean up the mess." That's when the argument escalated. Melissa stood up, tears streaming, trying to salvage something. "This is my house too, Isaac. You can't just throw me out." I looked at her with something that might have been pity if it hadn't been so cold. "Actually, I can," I replied evenly. "I bought this house 3 years before we got married, my name on the deed, my mortgage. You have no legal claim to it." Melissa's face went white as she realized she'd miscalculated catastrophically. She'd assumed I would be the safe, accommodating husband who'd accept anything to avoid confrontation. She was wrong. "Pack your bags," I said quietly. "You have until tomorrow evening to get your belongings and get out." She went upstairs crying, her sobs echoing through the house. I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the breakfast I'd made to reconnect with my cheating wife, and felt something cold and analytical take over. I didn't cry, I didn't shout, I didn't break anything. I did something much more dangerous. I started planning. By Monday morning, Melissa and Richard would learn what happens when you betray a man who values honesty above all else. What? I called attorney Laura Kim at 2:17 p.m. Saturday afternoon. She answered on the second ring, recognizing my number from our previous estate planning work. "Isaac, everything okay?" she asked. "I need a divorce attorney," I said without preamble. "My wife has been having an affair for 6 months. She's pregnant. She wants me to raise the child." There was a long pause. Laura was a consummate professional, 30 years in family law, but I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Jesus, Isaac, I'm so sorry," she responded, then immediately shifting into lawyer mode. "Can you come in Monday morning?" "Actually, I was hoping we could talk today," I replied. "I want papers filed first thing Monday." "That's aggressive," she observed. "Are you sure you don't want time to think this through?" I explained the situation in precise detail. Melissa's affair with her boss, the pregnancy, her expectation that I would accept this and help raise another man's child. Laura listened without interrupting, taking notes. "Here's what we're looking at," she said when I finished. "In this state, adultery affects alimony eligibility. She won't get spousal support if we can prove infidelity, which we can. The house is premarital property, so that stays entirely yours. We'll split marital assets 50-50, but you should emerge financially intact." "How quickly can we move?" I asked. "Papers drafted tomorrow, filed Monday morning, served by Tuesday afternoon," she answered. "But Isaac, this is going to get ugly. Affairs always do, especially with a workplace component." "Good," I replied. "I want it ugly." Sunday was surreal. Melissa moved through the house like a ghost, packing clothes and personal items. She alternated between crying jags, attempts to talk to me, and phone calls taken in the guest bedroom with the door closed, probably with Richard, though I didn't care enough to eavesdrop. She tried one last manipulation around dinner time, cornering me in the kitchen while I heated leftover pizza. "Isaac, please," she pleaded. "I know I messed up, but we can get through this. People work through affairs all the time. We could go to counseling." "There's nothing to work through," I interrupted. "You made your choice when you f***ed your boss for 6 months and got pregnant." "Don't be crude," she protested. "Don't be crude," I replied, turning to face her fully. "You want to talk about crude? Crude is seeing another man while married. Crude is lying to your husband's face for half a year. Crude is asking that same husband to raise your lover's baby." "I love you, Isaac. I never stopped loving you," she whispered desperately. "If this is how you love someone, I'm better off without it," I answered coldly. She left Sunday evening, her car loaded with everything that had belonged to her before our marriage. She stood in the driveway for a long time, probably hoping I'd come outside for one final reconciliation scene. I watched from the living room window as she finally drove away. The house felt empty, but it also felt clean, like a contamination had been removed. Monday morning, Laura filed the divorce petition citing adultery and irreconcilable differences. Tuesday afternoon, a process server showed up at Vertex Analytics with papers for Melissa Turner. I heard later he handed them to her right outside the main conference room in front of half her department. My phone rang 20 minutes later, Melissa, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Isaac, please, you don't have to do this," she cried. "We can work it out privately. You don't have to humiliate me at work." I hung up and blocked her number. But I wasn't done, not even close. That Tuesday evening, I sat at my laptop and drafted the most important email of my professional career. Subject line: Workplace ethics violation, adultery, and abuse of power. The message was clinical, detailed, and devastating. I outlined the 6-month affair between Richard Calloway and his subordinate Melissa Turner, noting the resulting pregnancy and attached evidence. Text messages from Melissa admitting the affair and naming Richard, along with the divorce petition citing adultery. I knew company policy. Relationships between supervisors and direct reports must be disclosed to HR immediately. Failure to do so is grounds for termination. Sexual relationships involving power imbalances violate ethics codes designed to protect employees from coercion. I hit send at 11:47 p.m. Tuesday night. For the first time in months, I slept like a baby. Wednesday morning, I went to work as normal. Different floor, different department, but the same building where an investigation was beginning. I saw nothing official, heard nothing through formal channels. But corporate gossip travels faster than official communications. By Thursday, whispers circulated. HR had called in both Melissa and Richard for separate emergency meetings. Richard tried to deny everything initially, claiming it was a personal vendetta from a disgruntled ex-husband spreading false accusations. But evidence is evidence. My documentation was meticulous, time-stamped, and corroborated by Melissa's own confession. Friday afternoon, the axe fell. Richard Calloway was terminated effective immediately for violation of workplace ethics policies. Security escorted him out at 3:30 p.m. Melissa Turner was terminated 30 minutes later for the same violation. I learned this through carefully maintained professional relationships, people who respected my integrity and quietly shared what was happening. I didn't gloat publicly. I simply continued my work with the same methodical precision that had characterized my revenge. But the consequences rippled outward beyond what I'd anticipated. Richard's wife found out why he'd been fired when he came home Friday evening carrying a cardboard box instead of a briefcase. 15 years of marriage imploded over the weekend. She filed for divorce Monday morning, claiming the house and primary custody of their 2 teenage children. Melissa texted me from a new number 2 weeks later. "Richard won't help. His wife took everything. My parents are ashamed. I have nowhere to go. Please, Isaac, I'm pregnant and alone." I stared at the message for a long moment, considering whether to respond. I didn't. Instead, I realized that the revenge wasn't in what I'd done to them. It was in what they'd done to themselves. Melissa texted me every day for a week, each message more desperate than the last. I never responded, but I watched from a distance as the life she'd built, the career, the marriage, the affair, collapsed completely. And I realized the revenge wasn't in what I'd done, it was in what she'd done to herself. 2 months after the affair's exposure, the divorce was finalized. I met with Laura Kim one last time to review the settlement. I kept the house, my entire $401k and half the joint savings, $18,000. Melissa received her half of savings and nothing else. No alimony due to adultery, no child support since I wasn't the biological father. I learned through former mutual friends that Melissa's life had cratered. She moved into a cheap apartment in a worse part of town. Without a reference from Vertex Analytics, she couldn't find another project coordinator position. She was waitressing at a chain restaurant, earning a fraction of her former salary. Her parents helped occasionally. They were ashamed of what she'd done, especially the pregnancy out of wedlock. Richard's situation was equally grim. His wife took everything in their divorce, the house, primary custody of their teenage kids, most assets. He was living in a studio apartment, working in sales at a fraction of his former director's salary. When Melissa reached out desperately asking for help with the baby, Richard made his position clear. He wanted nothing to do with the child. He blocked her number. 4 months in, Melissa reached her 3rd trimester. I had blocked her on everything, but she found ways to reach out. New phone numbers, emails from different addresses, even a handwritten letter delivered to my workplace. Each message followed the same pattern: apologies, justifications, pleas for forgiveness, and thinly veiled requests for financial help. I never responded, but I kept the messages, documentation in case she tried to make legal claims later. Then 6 months after the original confession, Melissa showed up at my workplace. Security called me. "Sir, there's a woman in the lobby asking to see you. She says she's your wife," the guard reported. "Ex-wife," I clarified. "I'll be down." I could have had her removed, but something in me wanted this final confrontation. Melissa was visibly pregnant now, 8 months along. She looked exhausted, worn down by circumstances she'd created. We sat in a coffee shop across the street, neutral ground. Melissa broke down immediately. "Isaac, I'm so sorry," she began, tears streaming. "I made a terrible mistake. I threw away everything good in my life for something that meant nothing. Richard abandoned me. My career is gone. My parents barely speak to me. I'm raising this baby alone and I'm terrified." I listened without interrupting, my face unreadable. When she finished, I asked one question: "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm hoping you'll forgive me," her voice cracked. "That maybe after the baby comes we could try again, start over. You always wanted to be a father." "No," I stopped her. "I was honest with you from the beginning. I couldn't have biological children, but I was open to adoption or fostering if we both wanted that. What you're offering isn't parenthood. It's me cleaning up your mess while you pretend the last year didn't happen. I loved you, she whispered. I still love you. I leaned back, my voice cold but steady. You don't love me, Melissa. If you did, you wouldn't having an affair with your boss for 6 months. You wouldn't have gotten pregnant by him. And you certainly wouldn't have had the audacity to ask me to raise his child like it was mine. What you loved was the security I provided, the stable husband who wouldn't question you, who'd accept anything to keep the peace. She tried to protest, but I continued. You made a choice. Richard made a choice. You both calculated that the rewards were worth the risks. You were wrong. Now you're facing consequences, and instead of taking responsibility, you're trying to manipulate me into rescuing you. I stood. I'm not interested. I hope you figure out how to take care of your child because he deserves better than parents who make the choices you and Richard made. But that's not my problem. Isaac, please, she pleaded desperately. Goodbye, Melissa, I replied with finality. I walked out. When she tried to contact me again, my attorney sent a cease and desist letter. Melissa finally stopped reaching out. 6 months later, I had sold the house and bought a downtown condo. I'd been promoted at work, started dating cautiously, and rebuilt my life entirely. Meanwhile, Melissa had the baby and was raising him alone on a waitress's income. I heard through the grapevine that Melissa had the baby, a boy. She named him something I didn't bother remembering. Richard never met him. Sometimes I wonder if she tells her son about the life she destroyed to bring him into the world. But mostly I don't think about them at all. But 1 year after the confession, I sit in my downtown condo reflecting on everything that happened. I'm 34, divorced, sterile, and surprisingly, at peace. The view from my high-rise overlooks the city where my old life imploded and my new one began. Work has been good. After the divorce finalized, I threw myself into projects with renewed focus. 6 months ago, I was promoted to lead data analyst. I earn $95K now, have a team under me, and genuinely enjoy the intellectual challenge. I sold the house 4 months after the divorce finalized. Too many memories. The downtown condo is sleek, modern, and entirely mine. No history, no ghosts. Dating has been cautious but promising. I'm currently seeing someone, Rachel, a graphic designer I met at a friend's gallery opening. She knows my story, I told her on our 3rd date. That's incredibly painful, she'd said. Thank you for trusting me with it. We're taking it slow, but I feel something genuine developing. My family never wavered in their support. My parents were horrified by Melissa's betrayal, but proud of how I handled it. No public drama, just decisive legal action. Melissa's life, from what I hear through residual connections, remains difficult. She's still waitressing, still living in the same apartment with her now 1-year-old son. Her parents help occasionally, more out of obligation to their grandson than reconciliation with their daughter. She's on food assistance and government health care. Richard fared no better. His sales career never recovered the prestige. His children have minimal contact with him. His ex-wife remarried. He pays child support that barely leaves him surviving. I heard Richard tried to reach out to Melissa once after the baby was born, but she reportedly told him never to contact her again. I occasionally get messages from Melissa, now spaced months apart. Always the same themes: apology, regret, subtle requests for forgiveness or reconciliation. I never respond. People ask if I feel guilty. If I regret reporting them to HR, destroying their careers, refusing to help Melissa when she begged. The answer is no, not even a little. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't betray anyone's trust. I told Melissa the truth before we married. I couldn't have biological children. She said it didn't matter, I tell them. She lied. I protected myself. I reported unethical behavior. I walked away from betrayal. Those aren't sins, they're survival. Melissa made her choice. Richard made his. They both paid for it. I'm not responsible for fixing the consequences of their actions. I'm 34, divorced, sterile, and free, and that's enough. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.